Good morning and welcome to this Dharma talk. Thank you for continuing to support this community, this teacher, and this particular way of teaching the Buddha's Dharma. 2,500 years of this, taught lots of different ways, taught in such a way that no matter who you are, there's probably an understanding of what the Buddha taught that would support you in living your life in a sane and uplifted way that does not create more warfare for yourself or for anyone else. If you haven't noticed around you, there's a lot of warfare going on, not only out in the world, but across the kitchen table sometimes. This morning's Dharma talk is titled, and I'm trying to talk about something I've talked about again, something I've talked about quite a bit, and that's consciousness and how that works in a way that supports your sanity and your intelligence and doesn't obstruct that with getting you to just shut down on what you're seeing and go to a form or a standard for that. This is very challenging and difficult because it's just easier to just obey. Just do what you're told. In most situations, maybe not all, of course, but in a lot of situations, it just works fine. Just obey the law. Just whatever the rules are, whatever the laws are, whatever the structure is, whatever the form is, just do that. Just, don't just make up stuff. So the title of the talk is Observe or Obey. There's 3 O's in a row with a big or in the middle. Now it doesn't really come down to either or because it's so incredibly complicated, that area of should I, shouldn't I, those kinds of things. Should I do it this way or that way? Should I do what my mother says? Should I do what my son is saying? Should I do what my teacher says? Should I? It's all over the place. Very complicated stuff. And invariably, we find ourselves doing something that because we're working out of our consciousness, out of our awareness, we're actually observing that. And we're seeing in ourselves that, I'm going to use my hands here, we're seeing something arise, and rather than obeying it, just doing what the law, the situation, or the structure, or what we're told, instead, we're going to observe that for a while, that possibly there might be a different area that is more intelligent, more insightful, more respectful of your intelligence, not just your ability to follow orders. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I know what it's like to follow orders. You better do it. You don't want to find yourself in the brig. You don't question anything. You just do it. Some traditions of Buddhism are very much like that. Do what you are told. And in some ways, some areas, that's very important. We have social structures and so on that tell us how to live. You can live your whole life following orders and totally miss your life because your karma is arising completely individual out of beginningless time from many, many lifetimes ago. It's trying to show up here and trying to get some kind of acknowledgement from you in your life of what you need to do. You should live your life. I don't mean believe your thoughts or your emotions, but I also don't necessarily mean shut them out and just follow orders, or shut them out and just observe, or some other misunderstanding of what I'm trying to point to. I'm going to be through talking in a few minutes and you can ask questions, and I hope you will ask questions about observe what's happening, observe something happen, observe something happening, or observe something happening, and rather than continue to observe it, because that's very risky to the ego. That's very risky. What if you got something wrong? What if the person sitting next to you said, you shouldn't be doing that? That's totally wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. Getting your direction from others. Don't do that. I'm not saying don't listen to them. Don't go the other way and shut everybody out because I've got to be me. I'm just going to do it my way. Gotta be me, whatever that song is. Want me to sing that for you? I won't do that. I don't sing. You know what, you all know what I'm talking about here. This is a very risky business to be in, the business of teaching about consciousness, especially using a 2,500-year tradition that in many areas of that tradition totally clamps down and say, this is the way you do it and there's no choice. You have to obey this particular precept or rule or law. And there were times in society, and there were kinds of some societies in which the teachings of the Buddha's Dharma arose, in which that's the way it should be done. It had to be done that way. You had to follow the rule, the law. You had to obey it. That's not the case today. That doesn't mean that there aren't people that are looking at you, watching you, evaluating you, judging you. They're totally not looking at their own life because they think they've got it covered. Why? Ignorance. They're ignoring what they're doing. If you are ignoring what you're doing, you won't know it. The very nature of ignorance is to not know what you're doing. Why am I chuckling? I don't know. It feels better. So if you can observe and obey, observe or obey, if you can just observe what's happening, then you see what to do next. Like a very obvious, very strong image for obeying is a stoplight. When the light's red, you better stop. You should stop. You should obey that. That's situational. That situation requires that you stop. Now, a caution light, what does that mean? That means you have time to get through the light or not. How many times have you done that? Look at that and you think, I think I got enough time, and then you notice that just as you're getting into the light, you're not all the way through, just as you're in, the light changes. And then you wonder, is there a cop somewhere? Don't tell me you don't think that, because we all do. Except those people who haven't gotten to around it. You guys don't drive, do you? Yeah, so your day's coming. Won't be long now. Maybe. Start up with a motor scooter. So that's just a very cut and dried red light, caution light, green light. Green light doesn't always mean you can go. You still better look because somebody else may be totally oblivious, talking to their passenger in the seat and think that the light is green for them and actually it just turned red and they're busy tied up and they ram right into the side of you because you thought green meant you were safe. You are not safe. I'm using that example because it's so crisp and clear and it's so definite, and you're still in danger. Many years ago, I said something in a talk where I was trying to say that I was giving a talk on control. I don't know when it was, maybe 7, 8 years ago, on control. You do not have control. If you think you have control, you're in for it. Not this week, not that next week, maybe not for 3 or 4 years, but at some point, something's going to hit you. Realize that you do not have a say-so about this lifetime. Go ahead, disagree with me, but wait a few minutes. You can do it. Because you don't have that. This is an assumption built on the belief that this is real, and this is not. This is an illusion. That doesn't mean you're going to walk through walls. I'm not talking about that kind of illusion. Long time ago, one of my former students, now used to be a student, decided to go another direction. He overheard something I said in a talk. You may have to kill somebody. And he had a pillow made that said, you may have to kill somebody, and had a bloody knife on it. And it's in the white tar. I may have to send that back to him, so he may have changed his mind. But what do I mean by that? I don't mean you're going to suddenly just murder people. I just mean that you don't know you're driving down the road in your karma, in the causes and conditions you have no say-so about. You have no say-so about this. You're driving down and you're looking in the back seat because you think the groceries in the back are going to fall off and you reach back to get that. A child runs out between 2 cars and you kill them. I know it's a pretty horrible story as an example, but you just killed somebody. Did you mean to? Of course not. But even someone who murders somebody and goes to prison for many, many years probably didn't mean to kill anybody. They just meant to try to get their money, or they were starving, or they were poor, or whatever other kind of causes and conditions that stack up the time to be. behind any given situation. My friends, please listen to me. Don't believe anything I'm saying, but you could consider it. Wake up. Find out what this is. See what this is. Use your awareness. As a meditator, your awareness should be getting stronger and stronger and stronger so you can receive this incredible world without necessarily just following a bunch of rules to keep you protected. Make sure that you're doing everything right. Do everything the Guru says. Don't do anything the Guru says. But don't ignore the Guru. But don't obey. Don't obey. This is a misunderstanding. It might have worked in the 13th century. For some other time, some other culture. Not now. Don't obey anything, but look at what's happening. Now, if you're a child, then obviously you have to obey. But that runs out of time too. You guys should obey. Just letting you know. I mean, it's just, it's so hard to describe that if you're not a meditator, not someone who is stretching their awareness to see what's coming and going in the mind stream. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to believe the thoughts that arise and pass away. You're going to believe your emotions. You have strong emotions about this, that happened, that triggered this emotion, and you think you're right. And you will act in such a way to hurt other people, and even hurt yourself, but mainly hurt other people because you're tired of feeling like that, and you need to blame somebody. If you're blaming anyone for how you feel, this is the very nature of the chaos in the world of samsara. Passion, aggression, ignorance, pride, envy, hatred. Happens right in our Sangha. It's amazingly. Right in our community it's been happening. Very, very difficult. And people want to be right. So some people are so much interested in being right that they will lock down on what? Observing and come to a conclusion. That stops them from looking any further. There's no way that you can go around that. You're just right, and now you're right, and then you can tell other people how you're right about how you feel, and then people start to believe your feelings about everything, and they start to do what you're doing. It's just easier. It's just easier to believe that you're right. And there is no right or wrong. It's not that there isn't a structure that shows up as a red light, a caution light, or a green light. Of course there is. That's even happening in consciousness. It's just that the polarity that is set up there should be observed, not obeyed. And then, if you're observing it, then the consciousness that is observing that situation will see the differentiation and desire that is showing up as an incredible mixture. It's like the warp and woof of a piece of fabric. All the variabilities come together in such a way that create a dense structure that looks like it's right, or a dense structure that looks like it's wrong. And we believe it because it's too painful to look at the open dimension. It's too painful because what's threatened? Me, ego. There is no solid self here. There's no solid self anywhere, but you have to see that yourself. And here I am raising my voice. I've been accused of being abusive. If you feel like I'm abusing you, then maybe you should talk about it. I'm not trying to abuse you. I'm trying to help you see through your belief, thought patterns about it. People get so uncomfortable with being so insecure about what's happening in the mind stream, they'll actually just bring it all to a halt. They might continue to meditate over here, but everything else has come to a halt. Should it? I don't know. Maybe it's so painful that's the only direction you can take. If you can just observe, which if you're a meditator, if you sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, have all the senses open, and practice for several decades, several years, several months, several weeks, several hours, just watch what's moving in the mind, observe. If you need to follow your breath, go ahead, that's moving. But watch what moves. Don't maintain it particularly, just watch the movement of the mind coming and going, so that when you get off the cushion, go into your everyday life, you are retraining your mind to observe what's happening, rather than lay a bunch of stupid ideas and conclusions and judgments and opinions and prejudice on top of your very life. Your life is happening to you. Things are walking through the door called people. And you don't see those people. You see your idea, your judgment, your opinion. Even if they're your children, you're judging them. Stop it. And how you do that, you see the way you're doing that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to live like a coward. You're not going to think of yourself as a coward. You might think you're very brave. But if you're just judging and obeying and following a bunch of standards and a bunch of ideas, whether it's your neighbor's idea or your uncle's idea or your partner's idea for that matter, if you're obeying anybody, anything, including me, don't do anything I say. I'm not asking anyone to follow me. I'm not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. I'm here to help you realize your true nature. Realize who you are. Good idea. A good idea to see who you are so you have no doubts about who you are anymore. Other people may have doubts about who they are and they may project them onto you because that's the only way they can get rid of their difficulty, their emotion, their passion, aggression, ignorance is to dump it on you. It's called blame. If anybody is having an emotion and is blaming you for how they feel, this is a big misunderstanding. And it creates, all the wars in the world are created by blame. There is no blame for anything. And why? There is no separate being anywhere. Everything you're looking at here is an illusion. If you see what it is, you see that it is consciousness only. Not a fancy conclusion either. Go ahead. I was going to say I can continue to jabber away here, or you could ask me a question. No, the person behind you, the guy with the bald head. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing. With your teaching of don't do what you're told, are you saying do the opposite of what you're told?
No, I'm saying don't say, look at what's coming to you, listen to what I say, or listen to what anybody says, but you don't have to operate out of right and wrong. You can be aware of right and wrong, just like you're aware of salt and pepper. But they're not the same thing. There's a polarity there that should be observed, should be looked at. You may want some salt, you may want some pepper. You may want to go this way, you may want to go that way. You may align yourself with something that other people would agree with is correct. But you also may be, with your awareness, may see the differentiation that is happening in that area. There's no way you can find the right approach there, and you might want to not do anything at all. And someone else might be yammering at you to, well, you need to do this, or you need that. You notice how many people are all willing, without even knowing you or your life or what it's like to be you at all, will send you emails telling you what you should do with your life. Notice that? People will tell you because they don't like what's happening in their mind, and one of the ways they can deal with that is to spread it off on you. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing. That teaching, to me, it seems like it can be provocative, or
Which one?
don't do what you're told.
Well, you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying go the other direction. You don't have to lock down on what I said when I'm saying don't do what you're told. I'm saying you can listen to what you're being told, and then you may do that, you may not, but don't do it just because you're being told that. Just because he, she, they, or somebody, or a law or something told you, if it says, if we're looking at a red light, you should stop. I'm not saying don't do what you're told. I'm not talking about it that way. Can you see what I'm saying? I'm surprised you misunderstand that. You want me to come over there and smack you one? Oh no, then everybody be right. I'm an abusive person.
You have my permission to hit me as much as you'd like, Sokuzan.
Thank you. I'll hit you with a stick you just gifted me with.
Would you like me to come up there?
No, but thank you very much for this coaster. It's very nice, very beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying polarizing. I'm saying you do use your awareness. You may do something that someone might say, well, that's right. You might do something else, and someone will say, well, you shouldn't be doing that. That's because they're living out of causes. They're living out of structures of belief, opinions, laws, and everything, because it protects the ego. If you live in an open dimension, you will have no protection for your apparent identity. If that's what you're headed for, if you're not interested, stop meditating. Don't meditate anymore. If you want to liberate yourself before your body even goes back into the elements, sit down and watch what moves in the mind and discover your own basic sanity. Live out of your sanity rather than out of agreeing or obeying anyone. Sometimes the things you do are going to be very, very unconventional, and people will, just like what's been happening to the situation here. People do not understand that because they're still operating out of what? Right and wrong, correct and incorrect, should be, shouldn't be. And I can see Chisho's scowling right now. Chisho, you have a great sense of humor. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Shoto bowing. It seems like traditionally with morals or ethics or standards, it's a way to prevent actions. But with the way that you teach, would you say a better way of working with ethics and morals is to include the line being crossed, to include the infraction?
Include everything. Include Coben. When I asked Coben for precepts many years ago, I said, I'd like to take the precepts with you. I want you to be my teacher. That's what I was saying to him. And he more or less barked back. The only time I've ever heard barked back at me. You don't take precepts, you observe them. And that was so embarrassing to me because I knew what he was talking about. I didn't know in concepts or ideas, but I knew that he was pointing at something over here, and that was my own narcissism and self-centeredness. It's painful, but I have never forgotten that. And I'm teaching out of what I was taught, which is a little unusual. Don't observe or don't obey. Observe. You observe it. You don't take it. You observe that. So therefore, the situation itself may go this way, may go that way, and that way there's an open dimension. Because nothing lasts. You notice how no matter the way you know something's a plan that doesn't work, nothing, you can't plan anything. Just like, you may have to kill somebody. You don't know that. Your whole life can change right after you leave here, just turn on a dime just because of this or that, or uncontrollable situations. More?
No, thank you.
Yes.
Elena Bowing. This may be more for a personal discussion, but maybe not. There is one area where I feel I want to obey instead of observe. And that is because I understand that if I sit with a concept and I meditate on it, it could take me a long time, where sometimes I don't have a long time to stop, like with addiction, with like drinking or binge eating.
Yes.
It's
So
like, I
what's
want
your
to.
question? I'm following what you're saying.
How do I work with, like, I want to obey until I get to a place where I have time to observe. Like, how do I work with that?
You just described it. Do it that way.
Okay, so obey.
It's always, and I'll come back to something I've been saying for a long time, it's always about awareness, it's not about what you do. Doesn't matter what you do. Except for you guys, it doesn't matter what you guys do. But it doesn't matter what you do in the sense that as following this or following, it matters that you're aware of what is happening, so you have a deep understanding of any kind of action you take. Another teaching that I often say is don't do anything unless you have to, and that's just another way of talking about patience. Don't go and move in any direction unless you have to, and that way there'll be more time for you to actually see the impulse to do any given thing. It's similar to what you're saying there. Just observe. If you're not doing much, then you're probably not drinking. I mean, you have to get up and go to the store and or send somebody or whatever addiction may be showing up for you. Very difficult to work with addictions. I've got a book I've been working on addictions for many years, and that's kind of coming apart. One of my helpers there has gone by the wayside. So it can be done with awareness. You can actually do this with awareness. It's just that it takes a long time to do that.
So are you saying that obeying doesn't stop awareness or interfere?
Obeying tends to fill up that area of openness where you've been receiving, because as soon as you obey, then you've got you develop some kind of a structure that is protecting the ego because you're doing something right, you're obeying. And this can work. There are areas, situational, where this might be something you need to do. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing, and there's, sometimes we talk about how we might meditate every day and there's like a repetition. It looks like we're obeying something, but to ourselves, it's a lot more spacious, even though it looks like we're obeying. We're doing the same thing every day. What's happening there when we're just
So
returning?
it's a form, when you return to a form, there's a kind of obeying going on, but it's something you're agreeing to do it. It's not like something you don't want to do and you're doing it against your will. I would say if you don't want to meditate, stop. Go do something else with your life. Maybe it's not your lifetime or your time in your life to meditate. There's no order to do that. I just say that from my understanding, it looks like a good idea to spend some time all by yourself, sitting still, so watching what gets cranked up in the mind stream. So you get to know yourself, you get to understand yourself, rather than get your identity from others, or your identity from concepts or ideas or beliefs or opinions or emotions. Go ahead.
Not yet.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Now, in the past, you've emphasized the importance of keeping our commitments.
Yes.
Is that the same as obeying?
It's very similar because you like if you formally receive a vow to the Bodhisattva vow or the refuge vow. It's kind of a commitment, but it's very personal to each person. How you do that personally, you don't, just because one person's functioning this way, others functioning this way, you can't really look over at the other person and say, oh, you're breaking your precepts, and it's really none of your business. It's something you should work with your own situation. So there's going to be something that happens in that area, but it is probably something you've already agreed to, you've looked into, you've thought about. If anybody that comes this way that wants to receive vows in this direction are sent the other way. Look at it for a long periods of time, sometimes years. And even then, it doesn't guarantee anything. A person can do this for years and come back, receive the vows, and actually go, 3 years later, break the vows. When I say break the vows, I'm not saying do something bad. I'm just saying just give up on that whole situation in some way. More?
In long bowing, it sounds like you're saying it's possible to keep our commitments without it being a form of just obeying. Is that true?
I feel that it is. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
In long bowing, can we just observe and keep our commitments?
I think that's a very, it's just like leaves in a tree, it's like there's lots of things going on there. So, but I would have to, there's no way, I don't have any way of disagreeing with what you're saying. I would have to say probably so. But for you or for any specific person, it's so very individual. Just as they say, I've been saying outside of Buddhism, keep your own counsel. Understand yourself. You understand yourself. It's not about trusting or believing your thoughts or emotions, but it's about, and I'll say this a couple times, it's about the space in which the emotions or the thoughts occur that you should trust. Not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the judgments that go on there. Those are very, very confused, usually. Not that there can't be some clarity there also. And the only way you're even going to know there is such a thing as space, as far as I know, is to meditate a lot. Sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind. It's just like you look at clouds, you look at clouds, you look at clouds, and then over a long period of time you realize that something else is there. There's the sky. Instead of getting hooked on the clouds or hooked on the thoughts or hooked on the birds flying through always this, and that's moving there, and this is there, and there's a rainbow, and there's a tornado, and there's a hurricane, or whatever, in terms of using weather as a metaphor of the nature of consciousness of the mind. There's just a blue sky. And I don't care what happens in that blue sky, it will not leave a mark. You cannot leave a mark in consciousness. But if you think you're a cloud, if you think your emotions or feelings are like that, some kind of object, then it can be marked. And this is called karma. You would back over and over and over, lifetime after lifetime, trying to polish something that can't be polished. Just a way of talking about it. Don't believe anything I say. I'm looking at it. I don't have a book in front of me. I'm not teaching out of a book. I've read probably thousands of books by now. But what I'm talking about comes out of what I'm looking at, moment by moment by moment, all the time. If you need my help, I'm here to help you. If you don't need my help, do something else.
Shadow bowing. I want to ask a question around agreements, in particular with like a friendship or a partnership where we are agreeing to a couple relative terms.
Okay?
Like we're going to be monogamous or we're not going to be monogamous,
Yeah.
something like that. How do we work with those agreements without a demand or locking down on them?
Well, you're just in agreement. So, no locking down. You want to do this one? Okay, well, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to be. And then you might look at it again in 6 months or something. You might give yourself a time frame on it. It's a very, very difficult area because we don't really know who we are or what we are. And we think of ourselves as individuals or separate beings that are in control. You are not in control of this. You guys think you're in control? You're in control? Oh, are you? What's your name? Not gonna tell me? What's your name, young man?
Matt?
Matt? Okay, Matt, are you in control?
No.
Kinda hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Lily.
Huh?
Lily.
Lily? Just one L? No, 2 L's. It starts with an L. Did you feel corrected? No, good. Phew, got off the hook, I didn't. Sure.
Shadow bowing. Do you recommend against trying to have those agreements?
No, agreements are fine. I think. And it depends on to use the fancy words it depends on if the person is operating out of their consciousness rather than out of their judgments, their opinions, their beliefs, and their emotional dynamic, then there's a good chance that agreement can be mutual. We can have a mutual understanding. If there are other things involved, then the projection about what you agreed to, what you didn't agree to, well, I didn't agree to that. So really, it's fraught with all kinds of assumptions about she said, he said, they said, those kind of things. You know what I mean? You've been alive long enough to know that. So just always give the other person the benefit of the doubt, if you can. If they misunderstood what your agreement was, rather than locking down your idea of the agreement, listen to that person. Talk to that person about it. Doesn't mean agree with them. Yes.
Shadow bowing. It seems easier when we're working alone on something because we can see how it might need to move left and right. But when you start including either one other person, it's so hard.
That's why people move to mountaintops. And that's why we have celibacy. And if it weren't celibacy, there probably wouldn't be any Buddhist teaching. It needed to be celibacy for a long time. And now there still is in some traditions, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm very interested in families and children, having children in a monastery. This is an unusual monastery that we have children live here.
I think it's a question for private, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on Zoom?
Joe Bowing.
Go ahead.
So how does free will play into this? Do we have free will? Is there such a thing as free will, or is that just an illusion? Are we actually making any choices? Bowing.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, we like to toss around concepts and so on. Free will is another one that, that all the implications behind that there is a separate being, which means that then there's a possibility of free will. Or there's a separate being, and because of the karma that shows up in that particular person, they don't have any free will because they're locked into a kind of karma that means that their thought patterns and so on are incredibly obstructive. They can't actually get any liberation from their own fear. So they're constantly operating out of fear. Someone who does that quite often becomes a criminal. Someone who feels like they're paranoid and they have to defend themselves against everything. This comes out of lifetime after lifetime. I'm not here to prove anything to you. And if I say something you think is, that is just wrong or off the charts or something, then, perhaps I'm wrong. I'm just talking about the way it looks to me. I'm doing this out of the consciousness rather than out of following some kind of a guideline or something. Like I told someone just recently that I'm extremely, very,
Ethical.
is that what I said? Were you there? How do you know I said that?
You told me. You told us.
Why didn't I remember that? Because I'm not ethical. Is that one? But I was saying to this person, joking aside, is that I'm very ethical, but it's situational. It's like Bonhoeffer had a book called Situation Ethics, where you're talking about you do something, and he wasn't a Buddhist, he was a Western philosopher, but talked about you look at the situation, and that's how you know what to do next, because of the situation you're in, not because you're laminating some kind of a grid on top of it, or some kind of a presumption about how you should function, how you should act. But I don't particularly follow ethics, including the ones that are set up in the Soto Zen tradition. There's an organization that I won't join because they won't let me ordain someone unless they approve of them or transmit them. I'm not sure how it works, so I'm not going to join that organization. So it doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong. It just means that not going to follow those preset rules about ethics. And I know everyone here probably has all kinds of ethics or guidelines, and you should go ahead and have them. I'm not trying to get you to stop doing that. But I'm saying that you don't really have to be confined by your beliefs, your opinions, your prejudice, your judgments that look like the truth. It looks like it's true. It doesn't look like you believe something. It looks like, well, it's just true. Yes. Oh, you were just praying. I'm glad. Somebody needs to pray. Yes, sir.
Nathan Bowling.
Yes, sir.
Is there value in obeying a rule simply to have the chance to observe our resistance?
Absolutely. Well said. This is what we do here. We come in here, if you come to this monastery like through Ango, which is our third year of pretty much obeying. You can't come in here and just meditate however you want to, although this particular form, and you, someone who's been in several monasteries and several retreats and so on, you have experience of lots of different ways that this could be done. You'll notice there's a lot of openness here. You can't, in some places you can't get up and go unless the gong rings, or you can't do walking meditation unless the gong rings, and somebody's always telling you what to do. And here, I think you should be able to come into this zendo, sit down and meditate and face that wall for 8 hours. You should also be able to get up and walk around. As my daughter, who was here a little while back, came in and spent, because of her physical situation, can't sit very much, she's in pain. So what did she do? She spent a lot of time walking around. Those of you who were here know that. And sometimes she would walk the whole period because she couldn't do it any other way. So very situational. More? You have any questions? No. No.
Brian Bauman. So as I'm working on this Rakusu and looking at various rumors and things that have been going on around here, this phrase came to mind, and I wonder if you could say something about it.
Maybe.
Okay,
Is it a question?
it's a question.
Okay.
What does it mean? Okay, so I'm sewing the Rakusu, and when I finish the Rakusu eventually, hopefully soon, okay, so it relates, right? What
What's
is
your
it?
question?
What does it mean? The phrase, the closer you get, the more you get burned.
It's just a way that Trungpa Rinpoche talked about a student's relationship to the teacher. With some people that won't necessarily apply. He just said the closer you get to the teacher, the more you get burned. The further away you are from the teacher, you don't get enough heat. So it's just a relative way of saying that you need the support of the teacher, but if you get too close, because the nature of consciousness that is entwined or or controlled by an ego form or a self-centered part or narcissism, or self-serving kind of thing that is about shutting everybody else and being first, the teacher is going to point that out to you. More than likely, you give them permission. If somebody comes this way and wants to function as a student of mine, I am going to do that. So if you get close, it probably will not be very comfortable. But you can also keep your distance. And, when I say keep your distance, you don't have to live here. You can live in Grand Rapids, or you can live somewhere else. But you're still going to, if you have a teacher, then only you will know what that is about for you. More?
No, thank you.
Short Bowing, as you understand it, if you could even say this, what is our agreement? Is there a basic common agreement that you have with every student for a student-teacher relationship with you?
My understanding of it is if you come this way and you are a student of mine, then you'll give me the benefit of the doubt. You don't have to believe me or obey me. But just whatever I do, if you can, try to receive it as a teaching. This doesn't mean that everything I'm doing is wonderful or ethical or right or anything. No, I'm just as crazy as you guys are. Otherwise, I couldn't help you. If I were somehow some kind of pure saint, there's several teachers out there that show up as being very saint-like. I don't think that's very helpful. Give you something to have to live up to. That means you stop looking at the obstruction to your true nature and you start pretending to be better than you actually are. It's just not helpful. Not helpful to do that. As in my view, I'm not saying there aren't students that need an idealized kind of holy person up on the top of the brocaded situation. Maybe you do. Yes, sir.
Milk bowing, does receiving the vows allow us to observe or increase our ability to observe what's happening?
I think so. When you observe something, you don't observe something and then think about it or add to it or judge it or do anything with it. That's why I often say, if you really are seeing what's in front of you, you won't know what it is. Because if you know what it is, you're doing that with the intellect or the judgment. You might be extremely intelligent, brilliant, might have 3 PhDs or whatever, and anything that shows up, that the upside of that is you might make a lot of money. You might be very erudite. You might be able to do all kinds of wonderful things with your intellect, your intelligence, write books and so on. But you may not be able to see reality. In other words, see what this is without a doubt. And do I make any claims? No, if I made claims, then I'd be lying to you. Or no, you can't make a claim. The only way you can make a claim is if there's two different things. And what I'm looking at, I don't see anything else. That doesn't mean that I have some kind of magical power. Sir?
Milk bowing, when we're observing and we find that we're obeying something, have we left what we need to see?
Not if you're aware of it. It's always about awareness. It's not about, if you're aware of murdering somebody. I don't want to take it too far here because that's pretty extreme. But it's awareness that's powerful, because someone in the midst of working with their mind is going to have negativity. You're in a relationship with somebody, suddenly you find yourself in some kind of outburst with someone. The downside is the outburst is not so good, the warfare with another person, or just anger at somebody. But what I'm saying if I'm your teacher, if I'm anyone's teacher, I'm saying, do not shut down the anger. Do not improve. Stop it. Don't improve. Sometimes I raise my voice, but it doesn't mean anything. When I say don't improve, that doesn't mean that if by looking at something, you don't find yourself being less angry, but being less reactive. But you might have to be very, very aware of the reactivity and be responsible for it. Not to blame, not about blame. Responsibility is the ability to respond to what happens. It's not about blaming someone for having a temper or losing their cool. It's about awareness, awareness, awareness. Always about awareness.
Elena Bowing.
Yeah.
when we observe something and it becomes less and it goes away, is that the same thing as releasing our karma to it?
No, I wouldn't get too excited about that. Now it can come right back. Anything that goes away comes back. Anything that shows up goes away. Anything is still a thing. It's still part of, it's part of the illusion that we believe that has us by the throat, that has us by the, it's pulling us this way, pushing us that way. It's constantly controlling us. Our whole life, our whole day is controlled by our emotional things pulling and pushing and pulling. It's just, isn't it exhausting to be in that? Now, maybe you're not, that's not happening to you right now, but it's probably coming next week, next Thursday at 4 p.m. Things just go haywire somewhere about something, and it might only last for 45 minutes, but it's there. And what do we want to do? We want to blame something. We do not want to be responsible for what happens. Just gone through a whole bunch of stuff here in the community. It's excruciating to do this, but we have to do it. We have to CCC. We have to communicate, cooperate, collaborate. If you don't have those three, then you have somebody trying to control things. We have to do that, and it's been very difficult for us to do that. We will continue to function in that way as much as we can, as long as I'm the person here that is, I guess, leading this community. We'll talk about everything we can. Right and wrong, or just, please don't do that to yourself. You don't really have to do that to yourself. You don't have to judge anyone. You can have respect for other people's confusion that you think they're having, rather than just shut down on them, lock them out. Just terrible thing to do, especially, well, I'm not gonna go any further. Yes, sir.
Long Valley. Last year, we had two practitioners who were asked to leave. And I'm very curious about that situation where, the difference between my personal responsibility and someone else being held accountable. Is there a better word than accountability, or a different way of thinking about accountability in this kind of practice situation?
Well, I don't know do I use the word accountability?
Just that one time just now.
Huh?
That one time.
Shut up. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean it. I did use this. Well, I'm not sure what, you don't have to say their names, but can you remind me of, my memories are very short these days.
One of our residents wasn't able to pay, and another resident got a little violent. And so both were not welcome for different reasons. And we didn't just observe that violence. We said, no, that's not acceptable. So, use another word from accountability. I'm just trying to work with what happens to me when I get angry at somebody for their behavior. And one side of it is blaming or not, but the other side is what do we do about this behavior?
You haven't been shut out. Is that what you're?
Not at all. No.
No, but someone else has been, shut up. Can you tell me?
There was someone who actually threatened us. Like there was legal recourse, if I can say that much.
Oh, that was, yeah, I remember that. And they were just told to stay away. So, but that's just kind of protecting, when it gets to that point, just because we're all these open-minded people doesn't mean that somebody can come in here with an AK-47. Well, we need to let them, we need to be accommodating for everybody. No, we don't. But there's a boundary there where you just can't do it. We had another person many years ago who was just threatening, and to use the very judgmental words, kind of was crazy. They were confused. They really needed some kind of help psychologically. They didn't need to meditate. They needed someone to work with what was happening in their mind stream. I don't know whether they ever got help or not.
So as part of being free and well favored, the fact that we can even observe and not obey.
Yes, free and well favored, good one. You don't have to obey, but have to observe to some extent so you can have an idea of what should happen in the so-called next. Yes, sir.
Long Valley. Just to clarify, I don't think it was wrong or inappropriate to ask these people to leave, or however you want to phrase it, but I'm more interested in how I work with the gray area. For example, someone who shows up every day late, or someone who refuses to follow other practices here, someone who is asked repeatedly to do something or not to do something and they choose to ignore that, where do we draw the line between, well, this clearly isn't acceptable, but this is acceptable?
So to use your words, I don't draw lines. If I drew lines, I'd draw a line and I'd never see you guys again. Too difficult. Too difficult. I'm not treated very well here. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about, I've dedicated my life to this for 50 years, over 50 years. And so if I drew lines, then I wouldn't count, I'd stay home. But since I'm here because of a vow, I'm here to help you as much as I can with your permission. So when somebody is late, I don't know what it's like to be that person that's always late, or that never shows up, or that says I'll do this and then they don't do this. I don't know, I'm always here. You can't find a time, you can't find a Sunday when I wasn't here, unless I was in the hospital. It's pretty hard to get here from the hospital. You can't find a Sunday in, I don't know how many years, 15 years, something like that. So I'm always here because I don't, it's not like I'm using willpower to get here, I have to be here. So other people are in different, I'm thinking people, I won't name them, but I'm thinking people that are working with a different structure in their mind that have a lot of difficulty obeying anything. And yet, we need to work with them too. We need to help people if we can. Now, some people, like you were pointing out, some people are just so, they're spinning like tops and they're throwing out so many sparks that we just can't work with them. They're gonna have to find a therapist or that wears armor or something. But we try to help people. I'm just kind of thinking of people that are difficult in different ways, and we have quite an array over the last 15, 20 years. Go ahead.
In Long Valley, do you have any suggestions or advice for the practical side? I mean, aside from the spiritual path that we're on here, there's also a relative path of paying the utility bills and fixing the hole in the roof. So how do we work with that side of things where it seems to be disruptive, or it
Yes.
seems to be threatening to the community?
I totally agree. And the way I do that is, the only thing I can really say that I'm doing here is to be a Dharma teacher. I try to teach the Dharma, work with consciousness, teach people when it comes to all the practical stuff. I try to get people to help me with that have their thinking process is more aligned to those kind of things. That's why we have an executive director. That's why we have a treasurer. That's why I have people that are more tuned into that area. So I don't know. Could you say something about, you're involved in all that situation all the time that he's addressing? Could you say a couple words about it?
Ondabong, I'd like to hear the question again, in terms of, is it flexibility that you're?
A moment ago, you said I don't draw lines, but
No.
we drew a line when someone was violent. So that, to me, I often struggle with distinguishing ultimate relative and potentially misapplying.
I can't wait to respond.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't draw lines, but lines draw themselves. If it gets too difficult, it's just like I don't have any standards for anything, but if somebody comes in here, walks over here and starts threatening anybody here and no one will stand up for them, I'll get up and use this stick. I don't have any, I know how to kill people. I was trained in the Marine Corps. So if somebody comes this direction with the idea, and I will not hesitate to stop them. That's all I'm saying, but it's situational. And it's so situational, if there's no boundaries anywhere, I'm not afraid of my emotions. I have intense emotions. Anybody that's been here very much hears me erupt all the time about this or about that, but it's on behalf of you. As far as I can tell, I'm trying to help you or you or you or you or you to try to work with your emotions as directly as you can. You don't have to be somebody else. You can actually be genuine. You can have the emotions and feelings that you have without changing into someone else. So that line you're talking about, I'm not setting up lines, even with the various people that have come here that are trying to train their minds, but something goes awry, they blow a fuse somehow, psychologically or emotionally or something, and they just start being violent or threatening, then what can we do? Well, let's tell them to leave and lock the door and very simple, kind of pragmatic things, but they aren't so much like drawing a line, but maybe, could you address that at all? Can you? You didn't want to do it?
I think you just did.
So we do it with a situation. It's like I said, if someone comes in, I don't have some kind of a boundary, like I'm this peaceful monk, so I won't hurt anybody. You threaten me or threaten anybody else, I'm a mirror. So you bring it this way, you're gonna get it right back. That doesn't mean I'm going to war, it just means it's like a mirror. It wouldn't really hurt anybody. Very much. Is that helpful, or can we go further into that?
You know, but I'm not sure how to answer it. Just, it's very challenging for me to work with intense emotions where I don't necessarily feel like I'm blaming an individual. I feel like intellectually I can appreciate the
Yes.
cause and conditions, but yet I still feel like there needs to be some kind of middle ground there between just not doing anything and blaming. Like, how can we, that's where the accountability came from. So if someone is continuously disrupting the community, can we have some sense of accountability without, that's hard for me to work
I'm
with.
following what you're saying, and I don't know, there have been ways to address that in the past, that people want to just set up a rule, or set up a law, or set up a structure, and if you don't do that, then you're out, that kind of thing. So I think, you know.
I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
It's more of how do I work with this when I see somebody, for example, when I lived here and there was a situation that was very difficult for me, very disruptive for me, which is a language that we use, disrupts my practice. So I had a situation that was very disruptive for me, and both you and Sokuzan repeatedly asked somebody to stop doing something, and they didn't stop doing it. Mm-hmm. And so that's very, very challenging for me, because it's like, okay, well then why should I not attack you? You know, why shouldn't I, if anyone can do what they want, but anyone can't do what they want. So that's what I'm getting at, that weird gray area where, how do we work with people who are asked repeatedly to do something and they refuse? That's tough.
It is tough, and I don't know that there's any like solution for it, other than that's we just work with things as best we can. I understand what you're saying. As you know, recently things have just gone crazy, and based on how people feel, and based on reaction, based on people believing their thoughts. It's powerful. I'm just glad you're still here and you're still practicing here. Yes, sir.
Shadow bowing, I feel like culturally or traditionally, protection is preventing bad stuff or keeping out bad stuff. And it seems like you will actually call on that. You'll invite that in. How is that protection?
I don't know that I'm inviting it so much as I'm saying you need to watch what occurs in your own mind stream. If you're responsible for your own negativity, your own polarity, and the things that are happening in your mind stream, you're less likely to download on anybody else or blame anybody else for how you feel. You're responsible for your feelings, your emotions.
Shadow bowing, this is my perception of you over the years, but what I see is an area where I want to kick somebody out or turn them away. I can't think of a time where you haven't at least tried to include them first, like they're always included.
Some people aren't includable, they just leave anyway, or they do whatever. Are there any questions on Zoom? Deb, you have a question?
Chocobon, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Toka.
You recently had talked about how one of your students that left you had a transactional relationship with you. Is there an alternative way for the student to function other than transactional?
Yep,
What is that?
here it comes. Receive. Just receive. If you just receive, you just receive. It's not just like the whole idea of dana. You don't give dana or generosity to the teacher to pay him or her or them back for their kindness or something. If you just do that without expectation. When expectations come that the teacher should function in a certain way, then you're gonna be trouble, because the tendency of the student to project onto that teacher, this doesn't mean the teacher isn't out of his or her mind and outlandishly mean or cruel or crazy, could be. But it's, if it's transactional, then that's what it'll be. You might as well be, that's probably, that's Elia and Shoka's background.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, he just wants to put his 2 cents worth in.
Want to say hi?
Hi,
Hi, Elia, how you doing?
I'm almost done.
You done with what?
He's almost good.
Oh, he's almost good. That's a start. Anybody that's 2 years old that's almost good is well on their way to improvement.
Joke bowing.
Yes, sir.
How,
Yes.
it seems like in the teacher-student interaction, the way that the student functions is almost inevitably transactional. So what is the difference between somebody that's transactional and somebody that's receiving?
Somebody that's receiving is a student, somebody that's transactional is looking for a deal. If you're looking for a deal, then I'm not saying you can't get one, but you're not gonna get one from me. I'm endeavoring with each person that considers themselves a student of mine, is to help you see your true nature. And if I see the way you're covering that up and I point to it, and that gets painful for you, and it gets painful to the point where you start reacting, then you may have to leave. I might be sad, others might be sad, you might be sad, but I cannot water down anything, and I won't.
Shokabang,
Yes.
is somebody that is trying to present themselves as an ideal student functioning out of a transaction?
Well, it could be. I mean, I don't want to get too close to evaluating and judging anyone. People have all kinds of difficulty. People have all kinds of just intense suffering that they cover up and try to appear different than what is actually happening in their mind stream. Deb, you have a question?
Yes, Deb Bowing. Sokuzan, you mentioned don't draw lines. Lately, I've been drawing more intense lines in regards to my relative perceived reality that my family and my child is being threatened. And it seems to be ramping up constantly in this time and era. And I know you know what
Yes,
this topic is for me.
I do.
And then I heard you say lines draw themselves. My question, I guess, is how can I work with this when I feel like the intensity is just continues to ramp up, and some days it just feels too painful. Although I continue to sit and carry on, is there any other, I guess I'm guessing to myself, I'm thinking, is there a shortcut? I feel like I already know there is no shortcut with this, but I guess any more practical advice about that drawing of lines and how I can try to soften that and function in my world. Deb Bowing.
Do it in your consciousness. Don't do it with your thought process, because that just goes in circles and you'll just hammer yourself out of fear. I can say it in a couple of words, but you have to contemplate what I'm about to say. Don't conclude anything. Don't think about it. Just contemplate. Contemplate doesn't mean thinking about. So in order to have a shortcut, there has to be some space. And what you're referring to is without distance. It's immediate. It's right here, right now. You have to see it. Sit down, hold still, watch the nature of consciousness until you see that nothing actually occurs. This is an illusion. I'm not saying this illusion isn't really powerful and isn't torturing people like your son or like all the other people in the world. Of course it is. But that's the nature of samsara. Life is suffering, as the Buddha said in the First Noble Truth. You cannot get rid of that. But what you can do is you can see your true nature. And see, and your true nature is without any substance. It's just consciousness only. It's not a destination. It's without distance.
Thank you, dear Bowing.
You're welcome. So we're at the end of our sojourn, I think, so we can close. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything better be than that?
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shifu, shi son bu sa moko sa, moko hoja horomi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
That one's for you, Sokuzan. I love you.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Sokuzan.
You're welcome, Cynthia.